the Better Sex Podcast. My name is Deborah Catt, and I am your shameless host. This is the Better Sex Podcast, where we have unfiltered conversations about sex and relationship. This show is about the many possibilities of sex and relationship and helping you figure out what works for you so you can have better sex on your terms. I truly believe that a sexy world creates a happier and a safer world. And if you want to do your part in creating a safe and sexy world, please hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Today, we are going to dive into the world of my guest, Veronica Nabizade, relationship expert and owner of Relationship Restart. After having troubles in her own marriage, she went on a physical and spiritual journey to fix her marriage. From the Bible to the Kama Sutra, from India to Florida, she was relentless in her search for a better way. And I'm happy to say that she found it. Now she is the founder and owner of Relationship Restart. With offices in Florida and Virginia, she helps women with children whose husbands refuse to go to therapy, stay together and thrive, or divorce with dignity and respect outside of the adversarial system. So thank you so much, Veronica. I am so happy that you are here. I first met Veronica about 2 years ago, and I've just been really impressed with the way that she incorporates different aspects of relationships and helps people really have more of what they're looking for, whether it is to divorce or whether it's to stay together. So welcome, Veronica. I'd love it if you could tell us a little bit about how you got here.
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, thank you, Deborah. This is so great to hear my bio being read by you. Thank you for having me on your show. And I have to say that this journey was a big one, but I left no stone unturned. And later I would find out, okay, I've done human design, numerology, the Enneagram, Vedic astrology. Everything about me is relationship. So I am totally living my dharma right now. But how I got here was I fell deeply and madly in love with someone. And within 2 months, my husband asked me to marry him. And then 5 months after that, we got married. And it was a whirlwind romance of joy. And I just couldn't wait to be called Mrs. Nabizadeh. And I couldn't wait for my wedding night. And on the wedding night, if we could insert record scratch, that is when everything went to hell in a handbasket. My husband, he left on the wedding night to take his college buddies back to their place. And I tear-sobbed pillowcases, restless nights sleep. That was the night where the seed of codependency was planted. And I didn't know what that word was back then. And then when I eventually learned about it, I resisted it because it had these bizarre definitions, like a person who wants to be needed and a person who is manipulative and wants to control. And none of that resonated with me. All I wanted was to be to be loved by the man that I loved and to share in that beauty that comes with being in love. And so I went on a quest. I knew I wasn't going to leave my husband. And I decided that because I knew if I left him, somebody else would take my place instantly. I wasn't going to have that. So my husband was not receptive at all to, there was no two becomes one. It was more like, hey, you need to go get help. It's not me, it's you. And so I started my spiritual quest and I wanted to find out WTF was wrong with me. And that's where it all started. And it went from, church to everything that you read. I've been to the mountains in Tehuacan, Mexico with Don Miguel. I've been to India and studied with Sri Ravi Shankar. I've been everywhere looking for help. And finally, I found my truth in the name of love. I returned to myself and I discovered that I want to stop other women in my shoes from going through this maddening journey of looking outside for what only could be given on the inside. And I have a child. And so when I had my child, I had her later in life, and I just did not want to. Well, she basically, when she was 4 years old, begged me to make it stop. And her father and I were just arguing night and day, thinking that she wasn't hearing us. So I had this, I love my husband. I got to fix something that's wrong with me. And I cannot let my child grow up in this toxic environment. So that was where I was at. So I eventually found my truth. And now I help other women find their truth too.
Thank you. So,
aren't you glad you asked me that question?
I am, but I'm just gonna to pull it in just a little bit, because it's so it sounds like what you're saying is you had this amazing whirlwind relationship. Mm-hmm. You got married. You got into the marriage, and it sounds like you found you realized that you didn't have a whole lot of your own truth. And so what I'm imagining that means is that you were kind of going along with whatever it was that your husband had to say. And then even if it didn't actually resonate with you, did I get that right?
Deborah, you intuited that absolutely succinctly and correct. Yes, I was disconnected from my truth.
Mm-hmm. And so, and you were in a situation where you didn't want to leave your marriage, and you were, committed to raising your daughter in a household that was peaceful.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Okay. And so I'd love to learn, like, what were some of the things that you learned along the way? Because I know that you have an amazing system that you have created out of the chaos of what you learned.
That's right, because all transformation begins with the crisis. So we get to have these crises, and then we get to transform. And when you feel the auspiciousness of transformation, you just want everyone else to have it. And the biggest thing that I learned for myself is what I teach today, the stop, drop, roll technique. It's that technique that the firefighters that came to our elementary school and told us, in case we were, catch fire, we're to stop what we're doing. And we're supposed to drop to the floor and protect ourselves, and then roll in a blanket or a carpet to extinguish the flames. And that works when couples are on fire too. And through all my trainings, I realized that the simplicity was stop taking things personally. Drop all relationship saboteurs, and there's about 7 of them, and roll into peace and inner peace and harmony. And it's a single journey. It was a single journey for me.
Thank you. One of the things that we were talking about before we started the conversation was the idea of marriage as a spiritual path. Mm-hmm. And I love that. I'm going to open it up a little bit and say that I think that I personally believe that relationship in general, whether it's with your partner, your spouse, or your siblings, even your friends and your coworkers, is a spiritual journey. But I'm curious, Can you say a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Yes. And I'm just going to add on to what you said. A spiritual journey, relationships first and foremost start with the relationship one has with oneself. And as you so intuitively you grokked my situation so well, Deborah. I was so self-abandoned. I was looking to my husband to fulfill all my needs and my wants. And ultimately, my quest led me back to myself. So when I became my best friend, and it's not just best friend. When I came home to myself, the natural sequela of that is love, deep love, and understanding and compassion and empathy. And I was able to see my husband not as a crazy, one-up, grandiose narcissist, I saw him for this beautiful being that he was. And I decided at that moment that if I got triggered or activated, I would first do the stop, drop, roll myself. And I discovered my truth doing that.
So I'm curious, when you say that you abandoned yourself, I have this story that, when we, the reason that we abandon ourselves is because as we're growing up, we haven't had a lot of space for ourselves, or the expectations for us were so well laid out. And I see this a lot in religious upbringings, where there's a very strict way that you're supposed to show up. And if you don't, if your inner self doesn't align with the outer expectations, we tend to give up our own truth for the expectations. And I'm just curious, I really want to am I getting that right? Is that what you're meaning when you say abandon yourself? Can you fill that in a little bit?
Yes. Well, what I hear you're saying is more of an adaptation than an abandonment of self. However, an adaptation is born because the need to be safe and protect. So as children, we don't have not only the executive brain function, we don't have the maturity to defend ourselves. So we do learn to adapt, and we do have these mechanisms that keep us safe. So we become people pleasers, and we become pacifiers and caretakers, and we can become, like you say, through culture indoctrination or religious indoctrination or strict upbringing, pathological liars. I'm not, because we have to learn to give our caregivers what they want to hear so we can feel safe. But to me, self-abandon means, for me, it started with a fear to have my emotions because they hurt so deeply. And I later found out that I am an empath, and when empath, we're all sentient beings, and but I was born with an ability to perceive energy and emotions and tone levels, and a very, very when you say you go and get sunburned and your shoulders are sunburned, any other day of the week on a non-sunburned day, someone can tap you on the shoulder and go, "Hey, Deborah," and it'll be like, "Hey, what's up?" You don't feel anything, but when you're sunburned, it really hurts. And it's just it's really magnified. And so that I did not understand how to not be overwhelmed, but to disassociate from my feelings. Well, our feelings and emotions are our wisdom. Right? So if we're disconnected because it's too horrible and painful to feel them, we're no longer guided. And we look for external validation. And that was what happened to me.
So to be clear, the abandonment is not just the pleasing of the caretakers to stay safe. It's well, I guess abandoning is the word here, of not even allowing yourself to feel the feelings.
Yes.
And, hearing you say that, it's like not even allowing yourself to be present for what's real for you.
100%. 100%. Like if a person cannot feel their feelings, they really can't be present,
mm-hmm.
because it's painful to be present. So it's this numb. It's not an intentional numbing, but it's what occurs when, I believe, a beautiful young soul doesn't. And who does, by the way, who parents are equipped to know that every child must be cherished and every child is valuable. Every child is immature and that's okay. Every child is dependable. And no parent is equipped with that knowledge when we deliver our children. So an empathic child, that doesn't get held, it could be very traumatizing. You know what I mean? And so that for me, and then I'm a 9 on the Enneagram scale, and that's all about, wanting peace and harmony at all cost. Do you do that? Are you familiar with the Enneagram?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm an 8 on the Enneagram with a 9 wing. And for those of you who are listening, the Enneagram is a personality system, which looks at really where does your attention go? And
motivation.
And I highly recommend, I'll go ahead and I'll put a link in the show notes as a resource, because actually the Enneagram has been coming up a lot lately.
Ooh.
But when I hear you say that, what I know about somebody who runs 9 energy, if you will, is that, as he said, there's a peacemaker to it. There's a forgetting of self to it. There is a letting go of one's needs and for the bigger picture. And so I can imagine, especially if, the person that you chose was somebody who is a more forceful personality, that it would be an easy dance to then let go of that. And so
100%.
it sounds like part of your story and part of what your work is these days is having a partner that wasn't necessarily willing at the time to look at what their part was. And I see that a lot in my own practice. Actually, I have 2 things in my practice. One is the person who wants to things to change will drag their partner in and say, fix them. Or the partner who does show up is like, my partner won't come. So how do I do that? And, I have some definite thoughts about that, but I'm curious, what do you say to the women that you work with whose husbands are not willing to join them in therapy or in making change?
Well, that's my specialty, because I was that woman. I first find out, where's the leverage? Do you have kids? If they have kids, I know I can help them, because as moms, we want our children. We want to see our children be successful, responsible, independent thinkers. And we want to role model that. So when a battle-weary wife comes to me, the first thing I ask is, do you have children? And I help them. So that's my leverage. Then I know I can use that The truth is all of our, all the stuff that we have that we don't heal, it passes on to our children. And so that usually is a great leverage for someone to do their work, because it's easy to go get a misery stabilizer. It's easy to go eat, drink, work out, shop, than to deal with what's going on. So I help them. I empower them is what I do.
And I'm curious, so when you use the word leverage, what do you mean by that?
So it is my experience that how I am is not normal. That I'm confronting my demon, so to speak. Like I left no rock, no stone unturned. But it is my experience that a lot of people don't operate that way. And leverage helps me give them strength when they want to throw in the towel. And I'm not like pro marriage. I am pro personal development. And so it's like, can we extract all the juice from this struggle, and so you can transform? I want to get them to a place where they have compassion for themselves, compassion for the situation. And when I can get compassion in place, miracles happen.
So when I hear you say that, I think that, so leverage is the possibility of, if we go down this path, this is what's possible. And if we don't go down this path, this is what's possible. Mm-hmm. And when you say particularly around children, it touches that place in parents that wants the best for their children and wants, if not for myself, I'm going to better for my children. And That's it's right. Interesting because oftentimes, so the leverage is the place of
it's the truth card.
It's the truth card, and it's almost the spiritual card, because it's That's like, right. What is bigger than me that I am willing to do this for?
Bingo. That's it. Exactly. And some women say, he's never going to change. I'm out of here. Okay. They don't have kids. So, they're not like me. I didn't have kids when I was out there, lifting every stone. I think I'm a little different. I'm an outlier in that regard. And I think that was my path. My path was to suffer so much and find out every obstacle and how to overcome it so I can help people. But yeah, when I say, would you want your child to handle their relationship the way you are? No. Okay, well, let's do something about it. You want to do something about it? Would you like to take responsibility? Would you like to be a role model for your child? That's it.
That is definitely an ouchie. And I don't even have kids, but I can feel that one.
Yeah.
So I am curious, though, and I think this actually gets back to, or I imagine it gets back to the spiritual journey of relationship. When somebody doesn't have children, but just that idea that, like, if I can't make it work here, or if I can't shift something here, how am I going to do that in other places? And I really want to kind of bring it back to this idea. I can't remember exactly how you phrased it, but I know that when I talk to people, I'll use the term self-relationship, because it's like, the most important relationship we ever have is the one with ourselves. And as part of ourself, there is a bigger picture, at least the way I see it. And so it kind of comes back to the idea that we were speaking about earlier of relation as a spiritual practice. And so I'm wondering if you can talk to the spiritual practice a little bit.
Well, for me, I returning to myself is a spiritual practice. Getting to be with myself and enjoy who I am and what I have and what I do, to celebrate. I say celebrate my magnificence, right? that just feels so good to me. So the spiritual aspect is, how can I reconnect with myself and stay with myself throughout my day as I am in the flow state of helping others? And to always be in cahoots, or, completely synced up to my inner ecosystem. So I'm noticing disturbance in the force. I'm a harmonizer, right? So I'm checking in with myself constantly. How you doing? How are we doing? Oh, I felt a little dig there. Do you want to talk about that? And so that's my spiritual practice. I am constantly checking in with myself and all my parts, and I give them voice and time with me with, love and attention without judgment. All of us have crazy thoughts. All of us have negative thoughts. We have over 60,000 thoughts a day, 80% of which are negative. 90% are on repeat, right? So it's like, I don't resist anything. I am looking for how I feel. And that is when a part of me needs my attention. And I just mother myself. I parent myself. And to me, that is the biggest spiritual relationship, a spiritual practice. And a husband, I'll just say this, or a partner, because matters of the heart are so sensitive and beautiful, that when there's a disturbance in the force with the matters of the heart, we feel it so largely, right? And because we want to stay married and we want to have a happy home, we have to do something about it, because otherwise it's just painful. It's just a battle. It's a battlefield. So the spiritual practice is noticing when you get activated, when you get triggered, when you don't feel, anything less than boredom, that the tone. That's when you go inside and you check in with yourself. And that's the spiritual practice that led me to my truth, that led me back to my self-worth, my self-esteem, my self-confidence, my self-connection. All of that comes, all those good words come to oneself when they do the work.
I love that. And speaking of work, I know that one of the things that you've been working on is creating the sacred pause, as well as the stop, drop, and roll. And I know that you mentioned it earlier, kind of like what the firefighters talked about. But I'm wondering if you could tease that out just a little bit, starting with. Stop seems rather obvious. It's like I'm imagining that's mid-sentence, mid-complaint, mid whatever it is, just stop. And then the next part is drop. And you were saying that's dropping
Well, it means, we learn Mother Nature moves medium to slow. So the stop, drop, roll also works in a gradient. So the first level is stop escalating the argument. So if he did this or said this, stop the response. Drop the need or the expectation that you have that he or she should be a certain way. Roll into wholeness. And then I teach things like tapping, meditating, getting exterior, going for a walk, doing a reach and withdrawal, doing something to get back to inner peace. That's the first layer.
So I'm just gonna pause on the question of rolling into wholeness. I have a really good idea of what that might be. And I'd love to hear, like, when you talk about rolling into wholeness, like what are you meaning by that?
Holding yourself in the warmest regard. And I always ask people, do you know what that means? And they're like, yeah, I know what that means. So I'm like, you do tell me. And they didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what it meant. I'm like, what the hell does that mean? That means at each and every moment of your life, love yourself. No judging. Don't allow your inner critic to drive your bus. Don't guilt yourself. Do not shame yourself. You fucked up. Okay. All right. What's the lesson? What would you do next time? Are you okay? Can you handle that? It's about holding yourself in the warmest and loving regard at all times.
So I love what you just said, which was, I made a mistake. I fucked up. Let's move on. Or let's find the lesson and let's move on. Because I think sometimes people will say, love yourself. Don't let your inner critic drive, blah, blah, blah. But I love what you're saying. So basically, it is the moment of realizing that things did not go the way you prefer.
Mm-hmm.
And, so again, stopping there and, looking for, is there something I can learn here? Or is there something that, and maybe the learning is that I just need to not go there again. Or maybe the learning is I could have said something earlier. And then, so that makes a little bit more sense to me when you say, oh, so it's really rolling back into bringing the attention back to not just yourself, but I love the term warm regard. Because I think it's a beautiful way of putting that. Realizing that there is kind of a piece, there's worth there, and it's I think of it in terms of just like remembering that you are part of the bigger picture, and you're important in that bigger picture.
Mm-hmm. And it ultimately is a micro gifts of self-forgiveness, because we want to do right. We want to be good. We want to be helpful. We want to be loved. And when we do things that are that are the opposite, then we feel bad, and then we go into shame, and then we go into regret, and then it opens up the door to other things. And then we start collecting evidence. Oh, this is always going to happen. I'm always going to fuck up, and I can't control myself. This is so hard. That is the stop. That's another level of stop, and it's about, hey, where's the lesson? Where's the lesson or the blessing? Feel your feelings, name your feelings, tend to yourself.
It's so interesting. So my partner and I have been together for 23 years.
Wow, me too. We married February 19, 2000. When did you get married?
We're actually not married, but we connected the week before December 1998, which meant we got to party like it was 1999. But what I was going to say is that, well, he's a 5 on the Enneagram. And he is so much better at letting go of the mistakes. Whereas I notice I have a really hard time, like not circling into it. And so I'm curious if you might have a suggestion or a specific tip for people who, they love the idea of moving beyond the mistake, but or the fuck up, if you will. So I'm wondering if you have a suggestion or a tip for that.
You want a suggestion or a tip for someone who stays in the failure?
Yes.
Who chooses to be miserable? I know I could write a book, How to Be Miserable for No Reason. I think it's a future book. Self-inquiry, that some famous person said this, an unexamined thought is a miserable person. Somebody said that, and I don't know who, so I can't take credit. But if, the first question I would ask myself if I was, luxuriating in the failure of an event, or there's something I did, what am I gaining? How is this serving me?
Mm-hmm.
And, why do I want to do this? Why am I choosing to do this? Did someone role model this to me? Is this how mom did it? Is this how dad did it? Is this how babysitter did it? There must be another way, so it just starts with self-inquiry. Okay. I want to luxuriate in the misery and make myself feel bad. Okay. That's what I'm doing. So why am I doing that? How is this benefiting me? How is this serving me? How is it serving me? Curiosity and compassion are like the panacea for miracles and spiritual growth and personal development. Really, just those two things. Just have some compassion for yourself and be curious. Why, WTF do I do this? How is this serving me? What do I want instead? Oh, well, how do I get that? Oh, okay. Well, let me ask for some help. How do I support myself? What's the most loving thing I can do for myself? What do I want to feel?
Yeah, I love that. So I'm hearing you say kind of like starting with that thought of and getting curious about it, asking the questions, what am I gaining? The question that popped into my head as I was listening is this even true?
Exactly. Oh my God. Byron Katie's work has been such a lifesaver for me. And that helps. That is part of the spiritual work in one's marriage. Is it true that he did XYZ just to piss me off? Is it true? How can I know that it's 100% true? And then the turnaround is so like, no, I would have never done that. Oh, did I? Oh, I can find that. I can find where I did something like that, and it provides relief.
Beautiful. So tell me a little bit more about the sacred pause.
I learned about the sacred pause by my beloved mentor, Terry Real. And it's not from him. It's the timeout. We learned as in elementary school, like timeout, go to the corner. Terry talks about it as being a circuit breaker. So in my practice, that is one of the key components. That is one of the first techniques that I teach my battle weary couples. We are going to learn the timeout. And I had a gentleman say, I am not going to learn that. I had bad experience with that. So I was like, wait, you know what? I will rename it. We're going to take a sacred pause. And I just said that thinking, I think I saw a cat and I was like, oh, pause. Okay, sacred. I'm all about marriage as a sacred. Okay, sacred pause. And he goes, okay. I said, it's nothing like the elementary's timeout. And so the sacred pause really is just such a beautiful way for a person who has decided that they want to be and live a life of inner peace and happiness. And that is the most important to them. And they are understanding that they're in a relationship, and the first thing that they're doing and they commit to doing is being deeply connected with their inner ecosystem. So when they feel angry, when they want to one up, or when they want to strike back, that's when they say to their partner, and they can use any signal, a hand gesture, a word. This means that I feel activated right now. And if I stay here right now, I am going to do what I always did in the past. I'm going to yell. I'm going to blame you. I'm going to shame you. I'm going to do something. And I know that that's not what I want. What I want is a loving, deeply connected relationship with you. So I'm going to excuse myself for this certain amount of time. And then, so it's a technique that you teach couples to practice and do before it's needed. So that way, when it's needed, the couple, they know whoever's calling it they're calling it because it's the highest good for that act or that moment for that particular moment. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. So, and I know that you have an ebook that you are offering a free ebook so that those that are listening can learn the sacred pause so that they can have that moment to do something different than what they've always done. And it'll be in the show notes, but for those that are just listening, can you give your website so that they know where to find it?
Yes, please. it's easy to remember, relationshipreestart.net/book. And you can go there and download my free ebook for the Sacred Pause, as well as I have another ebook there that I absolutely love. It's Taking the Dispute Out of Resolution. So for anybody who is wanting to go that route, there's some tools there. And also, please sign up for my book, How to Stay Married by a Divorce Attorney. It's going to be released soon. And if you sign up, you'll get the updates on that.
Beautiful. Well, in a moment, I am going to ask you more about how having the sacred relationship journey and all that supports better sex. But I want to take a moment and just let people know how they can support the Better Sex podcast. And so for those of you who've been following me, you know that sex is a complex subject and it can make or break a relationship. Unfortunately, most of us don't grow up in an environment where talking about sex is welcome. And that's why I created the podcast. But the podcast is not quite enough. You need the practice. So if you're ready for tools, tips, and exercises to learn more, then please join me in the Better Sex membership. All the details about the membership are in the show notes. As I like to say, life is too short for bad sex. So now I know that I've given you a moment or two to think about it. And I'm
gosh.
What would you say that, how would you say that this supports better sex?
Oh my gosh. It is the bedrock to better sex. In my book, not my literal book, but in my eyes, in my life, in my experience, the birthright of having a union is the delicious pleasure that you get. And that only comes after intimate, trust and feeling safe and really great enhanced communication where you actually listen for what that person is telling you versus thinking about what you're going to say next. So listening is an art. So when we have enhanced communication, we have trust. That first and foremost is the bedrock to what all couples want and get to have. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I love that. So basically, if you want to have less fighting and more time in the bedroom, then please.
Fun times.
Exactly. Please follow Veronica on social media. Check out her ebook. She is brilliant when it comes to breaking down, large concepts and actually making them practical, as I'm sure you've heard today. So again, please follow her on social media. And if you want to bring more love and better sex to the world, please like, subscribe, and comment wherever you find or listen to your podcasts. And if you know someone who could be supported by Veronica's work, please share this podcast with them. And on that note, thank you so much, Veronica.
Thank you. It was so fun, Deborah. Thank you so much. I love the work that you do.
Thank you for supporting it. And again, have a wonderful rest of your day and listen again on our next Better Sex podcast.